welcome to another art time-lapse video where I'm redrawing an artwork from last year. The same one I also made an art video about. I titled that one The Cutest Chester and Abby Scene because I guess at that moment in the past it really was the most adorable one, especially with that one tiny little flower instead of a huge bouquet of roses that no doubt would have dominated the entire canvas and therefore turned our attention away from what's actually the most important, their expressions, their genuine love, and the appreciation of the little things. Well, if you follow the lore of my OCs, you can probably imagine that it would be hard for Chester to purchase such a, let's say, luxurious gift, since, well, he's just a humble musician from Oak Street who barely has any money, so, he struggles. So yeah, I wanted to remake that old drawing because I have to be honest, looking at it after some time, I didn't really like how the rendering came out. I mean, because of all the intense shading, which wasn't really necessary at all. Their overall colors ended up looking a bit too dark, so I decided to change that. And I actually altered their poses a little bit too. Now Chester wants to put the flower in Abby's hair, while Abby is holding the second flower in her hand and she's touching his hand. Yeah, this is definitely one of the cutest drawings I can offer you. Oh, and I also like Abby's dress much better here than in the previous drawing. Okay, so this time I'm planning to talk a bit more while the me from the past is working on the drawing. And this is because of the latest poll results where most of you chose content about my OCs and their lore. And guys, let me say this, I'm so happy and glad that you'd like to hear more stories about Starlight Springs and my characters. And while I'm saying this, thank you so much for that and for the motivation you gave me. Working on a webcomic, especially while having a 9-to-5 job and other everyday life duties, can be pretty draining. And I know we shouldn't base our motivation or external sources, but seriously, I can come back home from work and be completely exhausted. I can scroll through my draft script and think it's all crap. I can lie sleepless in my bed thinking what's the point and all of that. But then all it takes is one of your nice comments to remind me that it's all worth it. Yeah, internal motivation is important too, maybe even more important, but still, without people's support, especially during the rougher phases of creating, when we basically want to quit, this kind of support is so important and priceless. So once again, many thanks for still being with me. So the stuff about my OCs won the poll, and because of this I'll be making more content about them. And since long art videos were the second most popular choice, I'd like to mix these two together, record my longer art sessions and share more lore about my OCs and their universe in the background. I think that's a nice idea that would satisfy both sides. Gosh, how official does that sound? Also, I like the talking to actually be relevant to what you want to hear, things that would be interesting to you. So feel free to share some topics or questions you have about Chester, the rest of the characters and their world. I love to answer them. If we don't cross into spoiler territory, we'll be fine, I guess. For today's video, I have one topic that was suggested. Well, it was actually a question I got on Instagram from an artist called Sketchy Toonster. I'll leave a link to their profile in the description so you can check their awesome art. This artist asked me when and how did I create the cast of my characters. And I immediately thought that it would be a great topic for a separate video actually. But until I make that video, hopefully someday, I thought I'd simply talk about it a bit in the background of this art time-lapse. Either way, I was trying to come up with some topics that might interest you, and then I saw this question and thought Yes, this is it. So, thank you, Sketchy Toonster, so much. I think I've already had a slightly similar question, probably on DeviantArt, but that's okay, I have no problem answering it once again and in a video this time. So yeah, how and when did I create the characters? I think I'll start with the when, because this might actually be pretty interesting. Not all characters are equally old in terms of when I created them. I guess I should start with my oldest characters, and I'll probably talk only about the main cast for now. So, the oldest ones are Abby and Brandon, and believe it or not, I came up with them in 2013. That's even more than 10 years ago. And I already put them in the same story and the same world back then. Brandon was already a jerk and an antagonist, though he was much less deep than his current version, and he looked totally different. I basically revamped his design by 99%. Abby also looked a lot less like her current self, and I can't even remember how many times I worked on her design. Initially, she didn't even have her fringe or curly hair. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but my old Anthro characters didn't wear any clothes. Yeah, it's weird, especially since now they're all dressed, and it's hard to imagine them, well, you know. Okay, maybe not impossible, but it's not exactly a cool thing to do. They were basically 100% cartoon characters like Tom and Jerry, anthropomorphic but without clothes. And about that story I mentioned, I actually reused some of the concepts from it for my new Starlight Springs saga, but maybe only around 5% or maybe even less. I actually still have that story written somewhere on my old computer, that story from 2013, but I no longer have access to it. So yeah, even back then, Abby and Brandon's dynamic was somewhat similar, but it wasn't nearly as deep as it is now. They were also much less developed as characters, so you can probably imagine how shallow and cliché the original story was. Honestly, I'd probably cringe so badly today if someone forced me to read it, so I'm not sure I would ever want to go back to it again. Then Brandon disappeared into oblivion, and I focused mostly on redesigning and developing Abby throughout the years. Yes, years. And I eventually realized that without that jerk, she was completely alone. Because I didn't mention this before, she was originally meant to have a love interest, but that character was not my OC. He was a copyrighted character from a more or less forgotten animated show from the past. If you've been following me since my early DeviantArt days, maybe you'll know who I mean, but feel free to guess what character it was. I'm curious about your ideas. So yeah, you could say Abby started as some kind of fandom OC. Strange, but true. Anyway, since I made them break up, I realized she was now totally alone. I guess it was around 2021 that I created Chester. Mind you, they didn't really have any personality at this point whatsoever. They were just in love with each other. You could say they actually lived because of that love. Chester was originally just a stray cat, which was actually a bit weird since Abby was an anthro character wearing clothes, while Chester was a naked homeless cat. Yeah, let's just leave it without a comment. And I didn't create Chester with the intention of making him a singer. Heck, I wasn't even thinking about a band at that time. So no, Chester was not named after Chester Bennington, as some people have assumed. And no, he wasn't actually created as a tribute to Chester Bennington. even though I love Linkin Park and Chester was one of the greatest rock singers ever. The reason why I created Chester was actually because I wanted to give Abby a companion, a romantic interest. A very deep reason to create a character, right? Still, the concept of two, let's say, people from two different worlds was already there. Well, it was even present in my old 2013 story. I've always been struck by contrasts, differences between people from different backgrounds, prejudices, and for assumptions, and the irony and paradoxes around all of this. That's why I've always loved watching or reading stories built around similar concepts, and I was definitely inspired by them while creating Starlight Springs, which is basically called the City of Contrasts. Then around 2023, I thought that I could actually add more lore to these characters, develop them as characters, and set them in a specific world. Basically create an actual story around them. And I thought that now Chester was completely alone, so I decided to give him some friends. And they were Jasper, Trevor, and not Dwayne, not Rex, but Oliver, who basically became Rex later. They weren't musicians at first. They were actually quite similar to Chester when it came to his aversion towards clothes. I'm sorry. but they already had very similar personalities. Jasper was already a bundle of mischief and laughs. Rex, or rather Oliver, was the most reasonable one, and Trevor was socially awkward and shy. Although design-wise, Trevor is the one who went through the biggest transformation. After some time, I thought that they could actually become a band. Why? Well, honestly, I can't remember. My original story had almost nothing to do with music. I guess since they were stray cats and I wanted them to be less like animals and more like humans, they couldn't just remain strays. But I still wanted to keep the concept of contrasts. And I needed an actual reason and backstory for them, why they were homeless in the first place. In the end, I made them into rock and roll rebels, living on the margins of society and being proud of being, well, the odd ones out. They were people who rejected contemporary lifestyle and the so-called normies. So yeah, I guess you could basically say that they were hipsters in a way. Oh, and since they were a rock and roll band and got their instruments, which I tried to choose according to their personalities, fun fact, none of them had drums. So I thought I needed to come up with yet another character for the group, and that's how Dwayne was born. As for more details, I could record a separate video if you'd be interested in that. I could also tell you more about the other characters, such as Charlotte, Brad, Sheila, and others. But for now, I think I leave it at that. Let me know if you'd like a longer and more detailed video about how I created my characters. For now, that's it, I guess. Thank you so much to everyone who survived my rambling until the very last minute. I hope you guys enjoyed this narrative art time lapse, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!